Itentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to share our NextGen add-on solution, RefundManager, with you today. My name is Chelsea Grover, and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Itentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Itentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in NextGen healthcare. We're good at getting data into, out of, and around and through NextGen. Basically, our goal in life is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their NextGen software investment. We're passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything NextGen, and we also have two add-on productivity solutions for NextGen, ChartGuard and RefundManager. Next, I wanted to mention some upcoming webinars. The next one is going to be on April 12th, and in it we're going to present a demo of ChartGuard, your EHR downtime solution. ChartGuard is a NextGen add-on productivity solution which creates PDF backups of all of your upcoming appointments so you can continue to see patients even during a system outage. We're also currently finalizing a few educational webinars now. Dates will be released soon, and topics are going to include macro essentials, quality reporting using NextGen HQM, and check the pulse of your practice, where we're going to look at tips and tricks for reviewing the status of your AR and other financial areas. So keep your eyes peeled for invitations to all of these. Okay, so back to RefundManager. At the end of the presentation, we're going to open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you can type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Tom Seco is Itentive's Business Development Manager, and Joe Schultz is Director of Product Solutions at Itentive. So Tom, I'm going to pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. So as Chelsea mentioned, what we're going to talk about today is our RefundManager product and how it can streamline and automate the credit balance handling, refund check processing that occurs within your practice. And here's an agenda of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what RefundManager is. We'll find out about why practices buy RefundManager. We'll show you how it works through the demonstration. We'll talk about the different versions of RefundManager that are available. And then at the end, give you a brief overview of who Itentive is. And then, as Chelsea mentioned, answer any questions that you have at the end of the presentation as well. So the overall purpose of RefundManager is to make the job easier. And we do that by streamlining and automating the refund process, the credit balance handling process, and the refund check process. We're able to do that because we looked at ways within the full process of eliminating data entry along the way. And one of those areas that we were able to eliminate data entry is by integrating with the accounting application, your accounting application, in order to eliminate the data entry of having to enter in check information. And then at various aspects of the process itself, we also looked at ways where we could present the information to the individuals in order to accelerate the decision-making process based on the information that is given as well. The overall goal of a RefundManager is to increase productivity. When we went back and talked to our clients about RefundManager and the benefits they've received from it, some of the comments that came back were that there's an increase in productivity, that they've been able to reallocate resources to other areas of the billing and accounts receivable area, and they've been able to spend less time sending money out of the organization and spend more time bringing money into the organization. As I mentioned, when we went back to talk to our clients about RefundManager and what they thought of it, this is a few snippets of the comments that came back from them. I won't go into each one of the bullet points here, but I will bring your attention to a couple of them. The first one is where it says reduce from days down to hours now. That shows that there is a return on investment. And then if you look at the fourth or I'm sorry, that shows that there's a productivity improvement. And then the fourth one says pays for itself in time savings alone. That shows that there's a return on investment. There are several risks that are associated with carrying credit balances in the system for individual practices and businesses. And we'll go into some of these areas as well in a little more detail. With regards to Medicare, Medicare has penalties with regards to not getting credits back to them in a timely manner, and some of those penalties can be as far as suspension of Medicare payments or levying some fines. There are usually clauses in the insurance contracts, third-party insurance contracts, with regards to getting credits back to them in a timely manner as well, which, if that doesn't occur, can violate the terms of the contract. It can also accelerate or begin some audit processes too within some insurance organizations. There are state laws with regards to carrying credit balances for a period of time without having it claimed by an individual or issuing it back to an individual. Each state usually has its own law regarding carrying credit balances. California, for example, requires you to pay interest after 60 days following an overpayment if it goes unissued or claimed by the individual. Oregon says after 3 years, credit balances are considered unclaimed property and need to be reported back to the Department of State Lands. Other states have unclaimed property laws as well, and that need to be brought back to the state. There can be some class action litigation that occurs with regards to credit balances they go unclaimed or unissued. Some organizations think that that credit balances are a line of revenue to the organization, that if they go unclaimed or unissued, that the business can bring the credit back in as a profit, so to speak. And just as we talked about with regards to Medicare, with regards to state laws, with regards to insurance contracts, that's not the case. And then there is a possibility for potential fraud. We talk to organizations all the time with regards to RefundManager and credit balances, and organizations carry large instances of the credit balances in their system, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000, 10,000, and dollar amounts that can exceed 300,000 to 500,000 to $750,000 worth of credits in their system. And when you're getting into those types of numbers with regards to instances and with regards to dollar amount, the potential for some type of unethical activity increases. And by using RefundManager or a product like RefundManager, being able to manage your credit balances on a regular basis eliminates all of these risks or reduces the risks that occur with carrying credit balances. These next few slides I'm going to show you cover the process of a typical credit balance handling process within an organization, from identifying where the credit balances lie to the point of issuing a refund check. And so this one shows a typical process, and you're either going to handle a credit balance on a patient account either reactively or proactively. And when I say reactively, I mean a patient calls up and says, I have a credit on my account and I'd like to have a refund issued to me. On the other side, a proactive manner, you print off a report and you go through that report, through each credit balance on that report, and deal with the credit balance on the report on a proactive basis. Whether you do that every week, every couple weeks, once a month, but you have a process in place where you're managing your credit balances proactively. In either case, whether you're going to issue a refund or issue a credit or process a credit reactively or proactively, you're going to go through a series of steps to determine what to do with that credit balance. You're going to look at the encounter details, you're going to look at the transaction details, you're going to look at the account details, and you're going to decide what to do with that credit. You're going to decide whether to issue a refund or apply that credit to an encounter that has open balance on it, or you don't have time to process it because there's a lot of information there, so you're going to task it out for further research because you might have some questions on what's going on with that particular credit balance. Once you get through that process, and it can be an intensive process, because if you're going through and you have 200 credit balances that you're going to process on that report, you're going to go through a series of 4 steps for each of those credit balances. So you're going to go through 800 steps basically to get through that report. So that takes a lot of time. Once you get through that process and you've identified all of the credits that are to be refunds, you're going to get that refund information over to your accounting department. How that information gets over to accounting happens many different ways within organizations. It happens as it gets entered onto a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet gets sent over to accounting. It gets entered onto a piece of paper, and that piece of paper gets dropped on somebody's desk. It gets sent over to accounting via word of mouth, or it gets put together in a packet where you have the credit identified, you have all the backup pulled together, and that whole packet gets dropped on somebody's desk in accounting. So somehow that information gets over there. Once it gets over to accounting, accounting takes that information and has to enter in that information into the accounting system. And generally it gets entered in manually in most cases, where they have to enter in the name of the individual who's receiving the refund, the address, the city, the state, the zip, the amount of the refund, all gets entered into the accounting system. And you go through a series of steps for each one of those as well. Once you print the checks, some organizations enter that information back into NextGen. Other organizations do not. So the information that they would enter back into NextGen could be the amount of the check, the refund check number, the check date, and the check amount. And that can be a manual process as well. So as you look at this process overall, there's a lot of data entry that occurs, a lot of research that occurs with regards to processing credits. With RefundManager, we looked at that whole process, and as I mentioned earlier, we looked at ways that we could streamline the process and automate the process. We looked at areas where we could eliminate data entry along the way, and we looked at ways that we could present the information in order to make it much easier to find the credit balances, as well as to quickly make decisions on what to do with those credit balances. So on the front end, when we were looking at finding the credit balances, we had created search mechanisms and filters to make it much easier to find the credit balances. The way that we presented the information, the way we present the information to the individual makes it much easier for them to decide what to do with that credit balance, whether to issue a refund, whether to apply that credit to an encounter that has an open balance on it on the account, or to task it out for further research in the NextGen work log. We then look for ways to eliminate data entry, and one of the ways that we were able to do that was by integrating with your accounting system, moving the check information, the refund check information, over to the accounting system so that the accountants do not have to enter in the name of the individual receiving the refund check, the amount of the refund check, the address of where that check is going to be sent. So we eliminated data entry by putting it into a file and integrating with the accounting application. So really all that has to happen on the accounting side is the accountant needs just to make sure that there's check paper into printer and that the checks are printing out okay. Once the check process has occurred with the accountants, we looked at another way to eliminate data entry, and that was to bring check information back over to NextGen and update the patient account with the check information. So we bring the check number, check date, check amount, and put that back into the NextGen account so it's there for individuals to easily see without having to go back into accounting and ask them, when was that check sent out. So streamlining on the front end and automation on the back end. There are 3 modules that make up Refund Manager: a Credit Scout module, a Batch Detective module, and an Importer module. The Credit Scout module is the one that's being used up front, and that is the one that allows you to easily find the credit balances on the accounts and then be able to decide what to do with that credit balance, whether to issue a refund, whether to apply that credit to an account that has an open balance on it, or to task it out to further research to the work log manager. The second module is the Batch Detective module, and that's the one used by the accounting side to bring the refund check information over to the accounting application. And then the third module is the Importer module, and that is the one that brings the check information after the checks have been printed, as far as the check number, check date, check amount, and updates the NextGen patient chart with that information. And you're going to see these 3 modules in the demonstration as we go through it. The sum up the benefits of Refund Manager: reducing the time and labor for issuing refunds, being able to apply the credit balances to other encounters, be able to task it out for further research, be able to integrate with accounting systems in order to eliminate data entry and eliminate errors that can occur as well. Refund Manager creates notes along the way and throughout the whole process, so that you can see the automated activity that occurs with the particular account. And then, as I mentioned, being able to import the check numbers back into the NextGen application so that the staff there can take a look at it as well. Other features that we've incorporated into Refund Manager recently, we've been able now to have Refund Manager be enterprise, give you an enterprise view of what's going on financially there. So if you have multiple practices set up in a NextGen database, you could see a guarantor's account across all the practices, so that you can then eventually be able to move money between the practices as well, if you had a credit balance. You can apply the credits between practices, as I mentioned. Perfect for moving deposits, meaning that if a person comes in for an appointment and they make a copay in the one practice, or make a deposit maybe for a surgery or something in one practice, and then you just need to move that balance over to the appropriate practice so that the money can be put in the right spot. You can, we have the workflow capability within Refund Manager now that allows to separate the responsibilities of who can request a refund and who can process a refund or authorize a refund. With our new version of Refund Manager, we have the ability to split out those responsibilities and set it up that way. So now what I'm going to turn it over to Joel Schultz, and he's going to take you through the demonstration of Refund Manager.
All right, thank you everyone, and thank you for attending today. We're going to switch over to the machine with Refund Manager on it, so your screen may change a little bit here in just a moment. And you should be seeing in a couple seconds here the NextGen practice management application. When we created RefundManager almost 12 years ago now, one of the things we sought to do was make it as integrated with NextGen PM as possible, to the point where you're working with the live PM data, and it even launches out of NextGen PM using the add-ons menu. And when it launches, it gets your current user ID, the current practice you're in, the current database that you're in, if you're in NG Test or NG Prod, and so on. So again, it's trying to make that whole experience as friendly and seamless as possible. So when you go into RefundManager, it's an extension of what you're doing in NextGen. So Tom mentioned the various steps we do to streamline and automate the refund process. I'm going to take you through those real quick, a nice tour of them, show you how they work, point out what's automation, what's streamlining, and so on. We're going to use these icons in the RefundManager toolbar along the top here. We're going to start in the Credit Scout, which is the part where we're streamlining. We're finding things, you're making decisions, but we're going to execute those decisions on your behalf instead of you having to do a lot of keystrokes and mouse clicks to create credit balances into refunds or into transactions to move them to other charges or other encounters. So we'll spend most of our time in the Credit Scout here. Once we have a batch with refunds in them, we're going to export them out into the accounting system. And Tom mentioned that's the automation where we eliminate that data entry. We put it into the accounting system either directly or through a file that gets imported into the accounting system. And again, there are a number of different accounting systems that RefundManager supports. And from time to time, we do add new accounting systems to the list also. So that'll be the second step. And then the third step is eliminating the data entry of putting the check numbers and check information back into NextGen. So we'll do an import of the information that we exported out to the accounting system with just a few mouse clicks and bring all that check information back into NextGen and have it land on the actual refund transactions on the encounters. So to get started, let's go into the Credit Scout, which is where with your NextGen hat on the NextGen billing side, where you're going to spend most of your time. This is a tool that's going to help you find credit balances in NextGen. And again, as Tom mentioned near the end of the slides there, this works if you're a single practice or if you're multiple practices. Your user ID only has access to the practices that you would have access to in NextGen. So again, if you do have multiple practices, but some people only have access to their own practice, RefundManager respects that and will lock them into their own practice. But if you're in the business office and you can do several practices, again, we'll go ahead and respect that too and allow you access to those practices. So there's various search criteria on the top of the screen here. In the upper left, we have first name, last name, and then the encounter or account number. And those are useful if you have a specific item that you're trying to get to. So-and-so called, or we know this encounter has a credit on it. Can you just jump in and take care of that? So it's a quick way to get to those credits that you know about. The date range next to it is a way of chunking up the data so that if you're cleaning up your database and you have thousands upon thousands of credits out there you're going through, you can systematically take like a 3-month chunk of encounters and work those. Now it'll take into account the overall balances, but it's just a way of scaling down the amount of data you're looking through, because if we give you 20,000 results back, chances are you're probably not going to go through all those in detail during your one session. So this way you can kind of break things up and look for things within a specific date range. We have some filters in here, and basically their job is to help you find refunds that are well qualified, refunds that are somewhat qualified, or just any credits whatsoever. Additionally, you can use them to look directly for opportunities to distribute money from an encounter with a credit to an encounter where money's owed. Some of our clients have days when they work insurance refunds and days when they work patient refunds, so we give you the ability to select on that. And then along the bottom row, there's additional criteria if you're just working a location, a provider, charges with a particular department, or maybe you're doing insurance refunds but only for a particular financial class. We have the ability to skip people with upcoming appointments. Okay, so if they're going to come in and owe you money, you may not want to issue a refund form today. So you can select the number of days to look ahead for an appointment, and if they're coming in within that range, we won't show them in the results on the bottom half of the screen. And we also integrate with the NextGen work log. So if you've assigned tasks to encounters that have credits on them that you want to process, you can look for that open task type. Or if it's encounters that you don't want to refund, we can exclude by that task type too. So I'm going to click Find and get some results out of our test database here. There are several accounts that we've set up, several test patients that are good examples of how Refund Manager works. Normally, you'd kind of, if you were doing it in this mode, if you're searching by the date range, you'd start at the top of the list and just kind of work your way down reviewing. But for the sake of time here, I'm going to jump down to a few of them where we've set up various scenarios over the years. So let's go ahead and start with this test patient, Marion Kelly. Now, what we're seeing here in this grid is a guarantor view of the world. So we're seeing the guarantor, and we can see the total patient credit and the total payer credit. And then we can also see the practice or practices that the credits may exist in. You know, again, if you're single practice, it'll work with the single practice. If you're multi, you can kind of get a full view from here, provided your user ID has access to that. If we want to see a little more detail underneath that, we can go ahead and click the plus sign. And this top level, again, was the guarantor. Then we have the practice level. Then we have the recipient of the refund. And we have the encounters that make up the credit for that recipient. In a few minutes, we're going to see another one where we have multiple recipients, you know, a patient and an insurance both getting refunds, and we'll see what that looks like. So we give you the ability to drill it down even to the charge with the credit, so that you can go ahead and pick which ones you want to refund if there is a specific one. Okay, additionally, we have the ability to turn off the headers to make the screen a little cleaner. Obviously, those of you that have been around NextGen PM for a while, a lot of these values will become self-evident. So we can turn off the headers, and in which case it now tightens up the view a lot, and you can work with the screen a little better. But we give you the headers too as you're just getting started with Refund Manager. If you need additional information on this, whether you want to do the refund or not, we have both screens that mimic the financial summary and account summary items, screens within NextGen. So you can pull up the account summary and look and see, gosh, you know, were these credits the result of a whole bunch of adjustments, or does it just look like, you know, there was a copay applied and the insurance covered it and now we got to refund it. So this is going to be very similar to your account summary screen in NextGen, so we can break things out and see the detail of the various payments underneath it. So because this part is really streamlining, we're not going to go find every credit and issue a refund, because that would probably be a very bad thing in most practices. So we're showing you the credits and letting you pick if you want to do the refund or not. So when you decide you want to do the refund, you can simply click the R checkbox for refund. So if you just want to do one of them, you can click down here at the detail and leave the other ones unchecked. If we want to do all of them, which for our demonstration today we will, we click up high and then everything below it gets checked for that particular guarantor. Okay, so in this case, we're going to create refunds for 6 encounters, and that's going to happen for us in a couple minutes with just a few mouse clicks. Now, I promised you we'd look at one where we set up multiple recipients of the refund. So some of the refund might go to the patient, some of it might go to the insurance. This is all based on what bucket the credit balance is in, right? The patient amount, COB 1, 2, and 3 amounts. So let's look at our test patient, Mildred Key. I'm going to go ahead and expand that one. And we can see it's still in one practice, but now there are 3 different entities that have credit amounts on them. Okay, so if we tie this to the top, the guarantor, that falls into this patient amount of $44, and the payer credit of the $233 is the next 2. If we want more detail, again, we can expand it out, And we can see for Mildred, yeah, there's just one encounter there, and here's the charge. For Medicare, we can expand that out and see, oh, there are, 2 encounters on that one, and so on. Okay, and United Healthcare. And again, just like we said before, if you just want to refund part of this, you can go ahead and click on that. If you want to refund the whole thing, you can go ahead and pick up above. In this case, it's going to do the refunds for both Mildred, Medicare Georgia, and United Healthcare. So all that work, these 7 basically different refunds are going to get created for you with great simplicity and great speed. Okay, so that's a couple that we're going to refund. Now, I talked a little bit about distributions, which is, in our terms, when you have a credit on one encounter and you want to move it to another encounter. Now, we have a filter up above that can specifically go target distributions, but for the sake of time, I kind of left the search criteria open a little bit, so a couple of them I knew about would fall into here. So let's look at this one for our test patient, Catherine. I'm going to go ahead and expand it out, and we can see we have a credit here for $220, but when we get up to the practice level, it's only credit for $185. So that means there's about $34.15 that is owed somewhere. So if we want to go ahead and say, yeah, Refund Manager, let's distribute that, and we want it to do it by its automatic method, we can go ahead and click Distribute. And if we want to see what it's going to do, we can do a distribution preview, and it's going to come up, and basically everything to the left of the mouse is where the money's coming from, and everything to the right of the mouse is where the money's going. So basically it's this encounter, this charge, subtract this amount, and put it over here to this other encounter, other charge, other amount. And we'll see what that looks like in just a minute. Now, sometimes we have clients who have multiple practices who want to control where the credit goes. Maybe a specific credit was a specific deposit for the surgery center, things along those lines. So based on working with them, we built in the ability to manually assign the credit balances. And I set up another test patient here, Dennis, where we'd be able to do that. We have credits in a couple different practices. We have some money owed. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Distribute, but this time instead of Preview, we can go into the manual matching screen for the distributions. And what we see here is on the left-hand side, we have our credits. On the right-hand side, we have our debits. So we can go ahead and just kind of pair them up. And each time we pair them up, the amount gets reduced. And we can go ahead and keep doing that until we've got everything we've wanted assigned, or we just kind of move things over. So in this case, maybe we're going to match up the 1,200. So even though they came in at different times, this gives you the ability to basically say, yeah, let's go ahead and, pair them up a specific way. And in this case, we can just kind of move along until we pay off all our money. Now again, if you're single practice, this will work single practice. If you're multi-practice and you want to move money between practices, Refund Manager can help you with that too. So down below is the transaction pairs. Again, everything to the left of the mouse is where it's coming from. Everything to the right is where it's going to. And again, it'll show you a summary of all that when we go to post them. So we have a couple of these that we're doing refunds on, a couple of them that we're doing distributions on. This last checkbox here with the T is to put things into the work log. So let's say you look at something, you look at the account summary and you're like, wow, that one's a mess. I don't really want to really deal with that one right now. So you can throw it into the work log and maybe assign it to a research task and have someone look at that later. So as you progress through this and you pick your checkboxes for the items you do want to process and skip over those you don't want to process, you're not having to do all the work of opening up the transactions, creating them, entering in all the dollar amounts. Refund Manager, using the information in NextGen, is going to do that on your behalf. Once we're ready to move forward and we've got everything selected, we're going to click Process, and it's going to come up with our screen where we can go ahead and select our parameters. So think about your NextGen transactions. You're going to have a transaction code for refunds. Normally you have different ones for patients and insurances. For the distributions, you have a transaction code you can use to move money within the same practice. And then we have distributions for moving money between practices, one to write it off and the other to accept it into the new practice. Okay, I haven't done any tasks yet, and after the first time I do it, it'll remember the parameter, but we're just going to pick research encounter. Up along the top, it's going to show us how many different charges are affected by each type of operation. And when we're ready to have Refund Manager do all that work for us, so it's going to do 11 refunds right now with just us clicking the mouse and letting it go do its stuff in the database, create those transactions for you on the appropriate encounters, and we'll look at those after we finish out this processing. So those refunds have been created. We'll add that one encounter to the work log, and then the last piece will be doing the distributions. And again, we get that review. Most of the work being done is our Dennis Kramer test patient, and then Catherine is just that single one, because that was a really easy one, which is what most of them are, but not always, which is why we have that manual screen. So it'll go ahead and set up all those transactions in NextGen also. And in NextGen, they're going to look exactly like if you had done them by hand, except you didn't have to. So now we've used the Credit Scout, we've picked stuff to refund, stuff to distribute, stuff to task out. So what's happening in NextGen? Well, let's go to NextGen and find our batch. And this is the one that we had set up. I'm going to go ahead and post it. Then we'll go look at several of these after it gets posted. We'll look at the distribution first, and then we'll go and look at some refunds, because those are going to be what we send out to the accounting system. For our demo environment, we're using QuickBooks as the accounting system, but again, as Tom said in an early slide, Refund Manager supports a number of different accounting systems. So your typical batch listing by transaction code. So let's go ahead and look at Dennis Kramer, since we had a lot of activity on that one. And we'll go into the account summary where we get a kind of a full view of everything going on. So for some of these that we're moving between practices, you have the dollar amount. For the other ones that kind of net out zero because it's a plus and minus within the same practice. Okay, in this one, it's just moving between charges. This one, it's moving between encounters. And we can dive down into that encounter and see the distribution transaction for that side. And of course, Refund Manager is going to document as it goes along what it's doing. Here's the batch it was in. And it's basically saying, yeah, I'm distributing from this encounter / charge to this other encounter / charge. And in the other encounter, we'll have the opposite note. In fact, if we go to 63513, okay, additionally, encounter notes are also created, and we'll see those in a little bit when we do the refunds. So those are distribution transactions that were set up and created for us. Now let's go ahead and look at the refund transaction, and then we'll go follow it through the rest of the process, get that into the accounting system, pull it back, and for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and move through that process really quickly. So here's one of our refund transactions. Again, it has the batch and the tracking description. It created our encounter note. It'll create another one when we export that'll capture the address that's currently in play. All right, so we have that out here. So now we need to get those refund transactions into your accounting system, and that's the full-on automation where it's going to either create a file or talk directly to the accounting system and eliminate that data entry. So let's go back to Refund Manager, and we'll use our second icon, the Batch Detective. We'll find our batches that contain refund transactions, and again, a benefit of this is that those refund transactions can still be created manually and pushed out to the accounting system. So you don't have to do them in Refund Manager. If you're already in cleaning something up and you want to do the transaction for the refund, that's fine too. Add it to a batch. If it's a refund transaction, we can go ahead and push it out. So here's our batch that we've been using. We can go ahead and right mouse export. For QuickBooks, we have an extra step where we do consolidation of checks to the same, basically person or insurance. Most accounting systems can do that automatically for you, but the way QuickBooks is set up, it doesn't always do it real well. So a long time ago, we put in a screen. We set it up to consolidate the patient refunds automatically, and the insurance ones can be done manually. So we can combine those two into a single check. You can set them both up for automatic if you want, if you're a QuickBooks user, or you can set it up not to use it, which is for most accounting systems other than QuickBooks how we do that. So if you're using GP or something, Great Plains or something else, we can go ahead and say skip this screen altogether and it'll just go ahead and start exporting out. So now if you think about it, this is where you sent the report or the spreadsheet over to accounting, and they're starting to do all their data entry of the addresses and the payments and things like that. So this is doing that in real time right here automatically for us. Again, if it was one of the accounting systems where a file needed to be generated, it would pop up and ask you where to put the file, and then you'd let accounting know and they'd import it in. So now that batch has been processed. It's over here in the accounting system. So we can go ahead and see that our checks are set up here, but we don't have check numbers assigned yet. But we did save a ton of time on the accounting side by not having to enter all that. So depending on the accounting system, they may have to do a little bit of batch processing here. In QuickBooks, we just go ahead and print our checks that are all pending to be printed. You still do your reprints and everything from here. So, you know, if check stock gets messed up or, you know, paper jam type stuff, then you go ahead and, you know, do your reprint. I'm going to say everything printed okay. And now we have check numbers here, which is great. We have them in the accounting system. Well, let's go ahead and get that information, check date, check number, check amount, right? These three things here back into NextGen. And again, instead of doing lots of data entry, of course, there's a screen in Refund Manager to pull those back in. Because we did the consolidation, we took all those different checks and consolidated them down into 6 checks in QuickBooks. So we're going to pick that. We're going to hit import. It's going to go to QuickBooks, grab the information, and update the 12 refund transactions. Remember, we consolidated it down to 6 checks, but there were originally 12 transactions in NextGen, and it was able to update all of them. If it was only partially printed, then I could come back here and do this again. This can be done the same day. It can be done a week later. We have clients doing it many different ways. So now, to wrap things up with this portion of the demonstration, let's go back into here. I'm going to toggle back and forth to refresh the screen. So we have our original note that we created the transaction, and then we have our new note that it was exported out, and again it captures the address, and whether that's a refund address in NextGen you're using or an alternate address in Refund Manager that's been assigned, or the base address that's on the payer or patient, that'll be captured in here in this note, so you'll have that documented. And then let's go look at the transaction. And now we have the check number, check date, and check amount. Because it was consolidated, the check, this 1030 check, is for more than this, which is a clue that, yeah, there were probably other things on that check. And you can go and look in here and see for other encounters that have transactions with the same check number. Okay, so that's a brief overview of how Refund Manager works. The automation that we put in place, the streamlining that's in place to help you do the NextGen operations. It's been a tool that our clients have been using. We have clients going all the way back to 2005 on it. It's great for small practices, and it's worked great for enterprises. We kind of run the gamut with clients who are using Refund Manager. And again, going back to Tom's slide with all those different quotes, it's one of those tools that once clients get it, they hang on to it. It's such a time saver and such a productivity enhancer for the billing office and the accounting side of the house, because let's face it, no one likes doing the refunds. So Tom, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you to cover the rest of the slides.
All right, thank you, Joe. Let's see. Let's see, you want to change the screen over to me? There we go. Okay, so people generally ask us what to take to implement Refund Manager. And basically it's about a 90-minute installation process to install Refund Manager in your environment. And then we have created a series of training videos. There's 4 or 5 of them. They're about 10 to 11 minutes in length each. And we ask you to go through the training videos. Then we provide to you the Refund Manager user guide to read through as well. Once you get through the training videos and user guide, what we'll do then is schedule a call with one of our Refund Manager specialists. And during that call, they'll answer any questions that you have with regards to what you saw in the videos and what you had read in the user guide. Once you complete that, then what we'll do is schedule a time with you to train you in your environment, in a test environment on Refund Manager. And we'll walk through a few batches in your test environment so you've become comfortable with the process of just what Joe has shown to you, the Credit Scout module, the Batch Detective module, and the Importer module, and get familiar with how to find the credit balances and then how to take action against those credit balances. Once we get through the training and you feel comfortable in the training environment, then what we'll do is point it over to your production environment. And once we get to your production environment, we'll be there on the phone with you as well, going through the first few batches in your production environment. So if any questions come up, we can be there to answer any questions you have along the way there as well. There are 3 versions of Refund Manager, a standard version, a professional version, and an enterprise license version. The standard version is for single practices on the smaller side that use more of the entry-level accounting applications, Peachtree, QuickBooks. And then professional license is for larger mid-sized practices that have that use accounting applications such as Great Plains, ACPAC, QuickBooks Enterprise. And then our last license version is for the enterprise version, which is for larger practices that have multiple practices set up and may require multiple interfaces to different accounting applications. A little bit about Itentive. I'll just take a couple minutes and then we can turn it over to questions. We were founded in 2003. Our mission is to create additional value for your NextGen investment. We know that when you purchase NextGen, it was a major investment, and that investment probably has grown over the years. We want to work with you to get as much value out of that investment as possible. We have 19 years of experience with NextGen. We have 70-some employees in the company, most of which are consultants that travel from practice to practice, health center to health center, working with the individual organizations to improve processes, improve reporting, improve decision making in order to get the most value out of NextGen. If you take the 2003 and the 19 years, they don't add up, and the reason for that is Itentive started out as the IT department for a medical organization, and back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the business mantra was focus on what you do best and outsource the rest, the medical organization was going to outsource the IT department. The leaders of the IT department said, well, if you want to do that, what we'd like to do is form our own company and provide services back to you. They agreed to do that, and from that point forward, we've worked with over 350, 400 clients that use NextGen. During this time frame, we've become a strategic partner with NextGen as well. We do implementations of NextGen, process improvements, as I mentioned, workflow improvements, business process improvements, reporting improvements. We have a group of developers that can do template enhancements, do application upgrades, can provide help desk support as well. We have a group of IT folks that can provide managed services to where we manage your infrastructure as far as your desktops, your laptops, your printers, your local area networks. We also have our own data centers, so we can host clients as well. And then we've created productivity tools like RefundManager that we just went through. We also have ChartGuard, which Chelsea mentioned earlier in the presentation. We have an upcoming webinar on that in the middle of April. I think it's April 12th. And then we have a derivative of ChartGuard, which is an archiver solution for long-term chart storage. At this point, we're going to turn it over to you to see if you have any questions. And if you do, go ahead and enter them into the chat box.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Joe, for the demo. Again, you can type questions in the questions area of the webinar control panel, and we'll just take them in the first order that we receive them. So let me get to the first question here. What is the install process like? Joe, maybe you can take that one?
Definitely. The install process, as Tom mentioned, the out-of-the-box install is about 90 minutes. Sometimes we work with you on extended items such as customization of the GL mapping if you have a complex GL map, stuff along those lines. We normally start with a kickoff meeting, and then after the kickoff meeting, we do 2 parallel activities. We give you all the training information to look at, and at the same time, we work with your technical staff getting it installed into your test environment. Once both those items are complete, we come back together, we do a web meeting, and then we walk you through using RefundManager, very similar to the demo here. We'll take some credits out of your test database, go ahead and process them through. If it's possible in your environment, push them into accounting, create checks, pull them back, and then we'll go more in depth to the various features of RefundManager. But really the timing for getting running under RefundManager really depends on your practice and the speed that you want to move.
Great, thank you, Joe. And it looks like maybe this question is for you as well again. We run NextGen through Citrix. Can this still work for us?
That's a great question, and going back to when RefundManager was written in 2005, we did write it to run both in a PC environment and a Citrix environment because so many clients these days are being hosted, and even back then we were doing hosting ourselves in addition to working with a number of hosted clients that it just made sense to have the environment, have RefundManager run in both environments.
Great, thanks, Joe. And it looks like this is our last question, but we'd be happy to stay on a couple more minutes just in case anybody's typing one. How often is RefundManager updated?
RefundManager is updated several times a year. We're always putting in new features based on client requests and based on changes in NextGen that we want to take advantage of and changes in accounting systems. So it's a continuous update process. We've moved to having a website where RefundManager can be downloaded, and if you see a new feature that you want and you're current on your maintenance, you can go ahead and pull it down and update that in your environment.
Okay, well thank you guys, and it looks like that's all the questions we have, so I want to thank everybody for attending today. I hope that this was a valuable use of your time. Please feel free to reach out to Tom or Joe with any follow-up questions. They'd be happy to help you out. And gentlemen, thank you both so much for your help today, and I hope that everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.